Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and welcome to my panelists. I can already tell that there's obviously huge interest in AI, and in this session we're going to drill down to understand a bit more how AI can enable innovation. So Eva, I'm going to start with you. I'd like you to help us conceptualize generative AI. And I was reading that in Q3 of 2022, not one US chief executive mentioned generative AI on an earnings call. By Q3 of 2022, there had been, or 23, there had been more than 2,080 mentions of generative AI. So there's clearly been this huge upsurge in interest. Is it for real? How significant is it, or is it hype?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about generative AI, what that is. As the name says, generative AI is an area and field of artificial intelligence that generates new content, that being text, images. We've just heard a lot of presentation around that. What changed then those days? There is one fact. Those generative AI technology are based on large foundational models that are trained on vast data, billions of parameters, that allowed this technology to become multimodal, meaning the input is text, images, videos, the output is as well multimodal. That made it closer to all of us because that technology started behaving similar to the human. The second aspect, it democratized the access. Some of the speakers before talked about it. The access to that technology we all live with that. We use it every single day, even without knowing that. And the last not least, it has been contextualized in a larger context. Being trained on such vast majority of data, it not only understands the previous sentence, and infers from the previous sentence, it understands the full context. And the same sentence can mean different things in different contexts, whether it's a joke or a serious conversation. So all in all, I think I'm super excited about that technology, and I hope it will stay, because it opened a new era of new use cases and new opportunities that we should all embrace. But there is a warning sign there as well. It opened a new set of issues that we will need to deal with. So it's not about the technology, it's about how we deal with that technology and how we shape our future.
All right, great. Well, that's a great introduction. I think there's been a perception generally that Google has been more cautious than a lot of other AI companies in releasing the technology. You've obviously been working with AI for a very long time. You embed it in all of your services, but you haven't opened it up as much as some other of your competitors. What are the risks that you're concerned about, and how do you develop AI responsibly?
Yeah, there are two parts of that statement that you made. The first one, I'm not sure I would 100% agree with. Google has been extremely open in our ecosystem. In fact, we were the ones that published the Transformer architecture in 2017 that triggered the generative AI era and enabled many players to deal with that technology. We also open sourced some of the foundational models. So we have been opened. We, as well as you mentioned, embedded that in our products that we are now giving into the hands of users or companies. At the same time, I think, as I mentioned before, there is a warning sign because we opened the Pandora box of new issues that didn't exist before and that we need to deal with. And not only technology companies like SAP, like our clients, like Google's of this world, but as well cross-functional stakeholders, policymakers, regulatory, educational institutions, because we need to deal with hallucinations. We need to deal with IP protection. We need to deal with model safety. How do we ensure that the model doesn't generate harmful content about the war, about the crime, violence, how we avoid fake news, so to speak, with hallucinations. So there are aspects that we all need to be cautious about and need to deal with that.
All right, you raise a lot of issues we're going to come back to in a minute. But Thomas, I'd like to bring you in. Can you tell us, how is SAP using generative AI itself? And could you give us some examples of, amongst the 400,000 clients that you work with, what are the most interesting, exciting applications of Gen AI?
No, absolutely, more than happy so. And for SAP, for sure, it's a big opportunity. The internal usage of Gen AI is going through the roof. I mean, we use it in our support function, we use it in sales, we use it in marketing. And I mean, Björn also mentioned it, the opportunity in software development is just tremendous. And now think about 40,000 engineers at SAP now on steroids with Gen AI. This is just a big opportunity to really boost the productivity up, to deliver more innovations. And that's also something, when I think about generative AI, and also what was mentioned here from the colleague before, it's the positive outcome improvement opportunity what we have when we talk about productivity gains in this regards. But for sure, to your point, internal usage is the one thing, but we are super excited to help our more than 400,000 customers actually to benefit from AI in this regards. That's the reason why we're so excited to leverage this powerful technology actually in the favor to deliver new innovative scenarios to optimize business processes. That's basically where we are coming from. But here we are absolutely cognizant, and you mentioned the risks we see with hallucinations or how our data is used. We are cognizant that actually our 400,000 customers, they trust us with their most business critical data. And that's the reason why in a business context, we talk about business critical decisions. And here we cannot afford hallucinations. If you take a business critical decision, you want to know with transparency and explainability that you can, for good reason, take this decision. That's the reason why, for sure, we need to see how we can use this data, and Björn mentioned the proprietary nature of the data we have in our hands, to really derive a responsible and reliable answer for our customers. So we are really excited to see that. To give you some context, we have more than 130 AI scenarios already productive and more than 80 to come till May this year. So the organization is all over it. And what is also interesting is how the multitude of opportunities coming. On the way here, I saw an update. We, in the meantime, have more than 470,000 AI models on Hugging Face. 470,000, so it's really exponential. To give you some context at SAP, in our internal playground, we use more than 22 different large language models actually, and see the best practices for each case what we want to use, and have in the meantime more than 2 million prompts in the last half year with the internal development function, so really all over it.
Can you give us some more examples of how your clients are using it in imaginative ways? How are they using it to enable innovation?
I think a couple of key examples is our customers are looking for business decision support, which means how you can bring different context, external context about different countries with the large language models together with the proprietary customer data in the, whatever, the revenue in the country, the correlations, that basically if you think about analytics, this is a total different game. You can prompt, give me the respective revenues on the correlation of the GDP of a country, and are we faster, better? And that's on a fingertip. And for sure, if you think about the controlling function, they can do that, but it took ages. And now, on a finger pick, and everybody could do that. So exactly to Eva's point, this is democratized. Everybody has the opportunity to tap into information, into insights, and that's a huge opportunity. So business decision is a critical factor. Another aspect is continuous business process improvement. That's what we do, for instance, with our capabilities, that we don't only stop with process mining, but with the capability of the business applications, we can continuously optimize the process and include it in the configuration to change it leveraging AI. And that's what we do, for instance, here also together with Aleph Alpha. I think Jonas is here tomorrow, that we really see how in the various phases of AI we can drive a concrete business outcome in this regard.
Okay. I had a really interesting interview last year with Lloyd Minor, who is the Dean of Stanford Medical School, who I think was very excited about the possibilities of generative AI in healthcare and medicine. And he came up with this phrase that the internet was about the diffusion of information, and generative AI is about the assimilation of knowledge, which I thought was a very interesting way of putting it. And I've been thinking about that. Is that right? In that one sense, generative AI is going to enable a huge amount more content, and as we were hearing earlier, a lot of that is going to be fake content, and some people think there's going to be so much kind of fake content it's going to lead to the collapse of some of the models that are being created. On the other hand, it is enabling us to assimilate knowledge, and particularly in healthcare, Google DeepMind has been using it to model proteins. We are using it for drug discovery and so on. So where do you stand on that, Eva? Is it going to be helpful in us assimilating knowledge?
Yeah, it's coming back to the previous statement I made. It's not about the technology, it's about the way we use it and for what purpose. And to use it responsibly, I think it enables a set of new use cases and new solutions. But many times clients come back to me and say, what can I do with the technology? And the answers I always respond to is, what do you want to solve for? What are the business use cases? And healthcare, retail, financial services, there are a multitude of use cases. And how do we deal with the risks that might come back with that? For example, with hallucinations or creation of fake news. How do you ensure that there are checks and balances, that there are guardrails that we put in place? Within Google, we ground in factuality of the enterprise data, where we provide citations to the source, right? So that in a similar way as you Google something in search, you have a link in addition to the snippet, you can check exactly the source. In a similar way, we need to have those checks and balances and create those tools for the companies. In terms of IP protection, what can we do? If you generate, we talked about the diffusion. If you generate an image and the model generates an image, whose IP is that? Is it an IP of a foundational model? Is that an IP of the creator that used the foundational model, of a technology company that created the foundational model? Whose IP is that? And it's not only a technology question, it's a legal question. And within Google, again, created tools like recitation checks that check, so to speak, what is the source of the data, how much of that generated data has been replicated. But at the same time, we need to work not only as a technology company, but as a society as a whole, with legal experts, with regulatory bodies and educational institutions to ensure the proper use of that technology. So it will solve a lot of problems, right, but with the right checks and balances.
I'd like you to answer your own question about who owns the IP that is created from these systems, because clearly people in the content creation business, and I might be thinking of a kind of financial newspaper, for example, we think that we create intellectual property which is now ingested into a lot of the large language models and produced to produce other kind of output. So who does own the IP from these models?
Yeah, so this is a very good debate that we should have probably with the legal experts, right?
How would you answer it at Google?
Pardon?
How would you answer it? Who owns the IP, do you think?
Yeah, so for us, we definitely work with clients to ensure that the IP is being protected. In the examples of the tools that we created, we have digital watermarking, so whenever the model creates an image, we have digital mark that clients can use to uniquely identify the image. In terms of recitation checks, we have tools that enable that, so to speak, to check how much of the content of whatever content that was created is being replicated. And the clients, so to speak, that use that technology can check and decide on their own to what extent the content is being replicated. So.
Okay. Thomas, I'd like to understand a bit more about who's going to make the most money out of generative AI. Is it going to be the incumbents who kind of own the infrastructure layer, who develop the large language models and run the cloud computing infrastructure? Or is it going to be the traditional companies and the insurgent startups who can apply this technology to specific business use cases?
I think actually the entire market of AI is for sure a big one and a growing one. So basically, it's a huge pie. Everybody will have his fair share. But I think it's very important for every company participating in this, that we are very clear where to play. So for instance, for SAP, we are very clear we want to play in the business AI context. So dedicated decision that we leverage the best possible technology, like also Google, Vertex and others, which we bring into the context of the business applications. That's where we want to differentiate, to have the best business applications for our customers in place. And that's, again, a different competition level then, but also a different way how to compete. And that's where I believe there will be a lot of value generation overall for the companies, but even more so, quite frankly, we should shed a light not only on the money the suppliers do, but actually the value they can generate for the customers, because that's why we do all of that. And that's a massive opportunity. And here, quite frankly, also in this audience, I would like to give more the encouragement to start, because the reality is we're sitting here in Bavaria, in Munich, and we saw very emotional speeches about the innovativeness of this area. But in reality, the productive use of generative AI on the customer side, especially in SMEs, is very low in Germany. And that's something where it's a point to start. And while we have a lot of concerns and we talk about the risks, we should talk more about the opportunities together and how we overcome that. Because that's something, when we see the train running on AI and what's happening around the world with all the AI models, I feel we should start embracing that. And that comes also when we talk a lot about skill sets and we need more AI skills. Yes, we need more AI technology skills. I would argue we need a different mindset in the society to embrace new behaviors, to be more courageous, to leverage this technology to again get more growth. I mean, we talked about a couple of growth rates and potentials. McKinsey talked about 2.6 trillion to 4.4 trillion possible economic return. By the way, that's the GDP of Germany. So that's the opportunity to give the context. But we need to start. And that's what I'm missing, because sometimes, a lot of the times, we have a lot of good cognition, but execution is lacking. That's what I would call out here, actually. It's a call to action. We need to start, because the technology is there. The companies do it responsibly. The entire conversation is about that. But I should argue that we should start.
Right, I'd like to pick up on that point, because I think both of you have, I've heard you speak and write about the importance of cultural change within organizations to make the most of this technology. And it's understandable in many companies there's a lot of fear of adopting this new technology. We're hearing from Michael about the possibility of big job losses and the churn in jobs. But we're also hearing about the possibilities for using this technology. So how do you ensure that this cultural change within organizations enables us to maximize the opportunities and minimize the downsides?
I mean, we have here in this beautiful city the best example. A couple of 150 years ago, we needed horses to get from A to B, and now we have beautiful cars with BMW, and we could argue that the automotive sector generated more jobs, including all suppliers, than in the past. And actually, there's a nice statistics on changes in jobs. 60% of all the occupations which are done today were not existing in 1940. I repeat, 60% of all the jobs which all of us here do today were not existing in 1940. So we should not fear that new technology, new advancements, new business models, that they generate more opportunity. And actually, it would be the worst thing what we can do to try to avoid what is not avoidable, quite frankly. AI is here to stay, and it's also an economic driver, which is something which we cannot ignore. You mentioned a comparison with the internet in another context. The reality is, the internet was such a pervasive success because the marginal cost for content distribution went to zero. The moment you put something on the internet, globally distributed, fundamentally for free. The cloud was successful because the marginal cost for content storage went to zero fundamentally. If you think about the old days, you bought a USB stick, 20 megabytes was 100 euros. Now you get terabytes of data in Google for free, actually. So cloud, marginal cost for content storage goes to zero. And for generative AI, the marginal cost for content creation goes to zero. So it's an economic driver which is here to stay and here to last. And that's the reason why there's only one way, and that means positively embrace the future, actively do it, instead of avoiding what is not possible to avoid. And that's something where I would like to turn it around with a positive spirit to embrace the future and not try to avoid it.
Eva, could I ask you the same question about the kind of cultural change? As within Google itself, because you obviously pretty much more than any other company can see the possibilities of AI, but in Google there's a lot of churn of jobs. people are using it to enhance jobs in many respects, but there also have been job losses at Google. So how are you using it? How are you going through that process of cultural change within Google?
I like to answer that question by saying you don't start with technology. You start with the purpose. Mm-hmm. And many times, as Thomas was mentioning, it's about the problem that you would like to solve for. So the cultural change is, how do you want to use it? What is the value that you want to create for your users and for your clients? And how do you measure it, right? And to give a few examples, in customer service, obviously generative AI can create a lot of value. It can respond to questions. It can provide better or faster answers, right? It increases customer satisfaction. Or in developer efficiency, it increases dramatically productivity of the developers of SAP. But at the same time, you need to always start by asking yourself a question, how do I create a value? And is generative AI or AI a technology that would enable and solve for that problem? Because maybe it's not. Maybe it's something different. Maybe it's simple programming. So the first thing I would say is start with the question, how do I create value? Instead of starting what this technology can do. Mm-hmm. And the second, how do you use it responsibly? So I mentioned already, there are a lot of tools, and I'm working personally on a lot of tools to enable responsible use of AI. But at the same time, I cannot be left alone. I need help of policymakers, regulatory institutions, educational institutions, because we need to work and collaborate as an ecosystem to deal with that and shape our future. It's not the technology that should shape what we do and how our future should look like. It's us. It's us defining how we use that technology in the future.
So we shape the technology. Well, we certainly believe in that in Europe, I believe. So, Thomas, there's been a lot of debate recently about the EU AI Act and whether this is going to stimulate or stifle innovation. What do you think on that front?
I think for sure, as the largest European software company, we were very close with the policymakers, we're in close engagement with the colleagues. And I think what is very important, a value-based approach, a risk-based approach for AI is a good one. For sure, we need to ensure that we don't stifle innovation. I mean, that's clear. We need a balance between regulation and innovation, and that's something which we need to find. But in general, to also ensure that whenever there's a risk to do harm, that this is regulated, is actually also one of these protection mechanisms, which is a good one. For sure, there's always debate on the details, but I think a risk-based approach for AI is a good starting point, and I'm pretty sure that we will see more regulations around the globe and how we deal with it. But in general, we are positive to value-based and risk-based AI regulations.
Okay, final question to you both. I want to press the fast-forward button, and we're moving forward 5 years. What do you think will be the most exciting creative possibilities of AI over that time? And in particular, we're seeing the beginnings of kind of multimodal models developing, where you're combining text and image and audio and video and so on. What most excites you about the next 5 years, Eva?
It's a good question. Multimodality is here today. Even last month, Google announced Gemini, which is a multimodal foundational model. Input is multimodal, output is multimodal. So once again, you're asking me about technology, and I am responding societal implications. Mm-hmm. Because it's about the governance. It's about us shaping how we want to live the life in 5 years. And we can do it. Look at social media. What happened? It dominated us. The technology has overtaken our lives. We have an opportunity. Let's learn from those experiences. Let's take our lives in our hands and shape what we want to have in 5 years. And technology, as was mentioned by the previous speaker, is an enabler.
Yep.
So if there's nothing else you would take from this, I would say it's not about the technology that should define our future. It's us defining what we do with the technology.
Great. Thomas, very quickly.
I think the innovation potential is endlessly with that, but I hope for the next 5 years that actually Gen AI becomes normal, that we don't talk even about it, because hopefully everybody's embracing it positively, that we see the benefit in all of the companies for the users actually happening. And that's what I would wish, actually, that we, with a positive spirit, embrace the future with AI, and that it's not something special, and that we hopefully don't see the hesitation, because the innovation potential is endlessly, as we learned also here today.
All right. Well, I think that's a great note on which to end. We see the great possibilities of AI, but only if we put the humans first and make them drive the technology rather than the other way around. So thank you very much, Thomas and Eva.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.